So a lot of people during my travels will ask me about my accent. Where's your accent from? What kind of accent is that? Where did you grow up? Uh, Typical with me, I guess. The simple questions have difficult answers. And as far as accent goes, it doesn't really have any relationship to where I've been. It has a lot more to do with who you are. That's right, you, the person listening. It seems that in communication, the point is not to talk, but the point is to be understood, which means you need to factor in who's listening and how are they listening? What's their capacity to listen? If you're dealing with a non native English speaker who only knows a few simple words, I'm going to speak slower, I'm going to be a lot choppier, maybe even change the accent. If I'm having a night out with 17 Irish guys, I'm not going to hold strong to my roots from the 1980s and say, this is how I learned how to say this word and I'm going to say it all night. It's much easier just to fall into a bit more of an Irish accent and just talk like they talk, um, something like that. And I'm not really making fun of them. I'm not trying to do it as a ruse or anything like that. I'm just trying to be understood. Um, some accents are, of course, more difficult than others, and I don't necessarily even know where they are from. Right? I don't think it matters. I think it just matters if the two people are having a conversation or not. That's why I think video is quite difficult for a lot of folks because I'm just looking at a dreadful little lens. It's just a black eye staring at me. You know, there's no emotion, there's no response. I'm not getting anything back from the camera. And a lot of us social folks don't like that. We love human interaction, right? We want to kind of be a chameleon and change our behavior, change our style for our audience. It makes people more comfortable. The same way that you do this with cultures, right? You take your shoes off in Japan and China, not because you want to show people your socks, but because that's how they do it. Well, communication can work the same exact way. And I think the people that are calling other folks out, like, oh, you shouldn't use that accent, oh, you're being racist or something like that, that's absolutely ridiculous. If you want to make fun of a culture and put them down and ignore them, there are thousands of ways to do it. And by hanging out with their people and, building up some camaraderie, spending time with them, that's definitely not one of those ways. Uh, I think people kind of get the wrong idea about what's the purpose of communicating, right? The purpose of communicating sometimes is to get your point across, right? I believe that the world has always been broken down into two kind of sections. It's doing something for yourself, whether it's reading or learning or working on something solo. And then the other part of your life is sharing with others, whether that's listening, to someone's point of view, whether that's showing off your work, like a show and tell, or presenting a paper, right? Or even, going public with your company, saying, hey, I've created this company. Do you want to invest in it? So our time is kind of split into, I'm doing this for myself, I'm writing a journal, or I'm cutting my hair, brushing my teeth, right? I'm riding to work on my bicycle, versus sharing, like riding your bicycle, training for a triathlon with two of your friends. And I think you have to kind of judge your life in different ways, depending on the situation. So some people will say, well, I will never change my voice, no matter who I'm talking to. This is who I am. Great. That's who you are. You know, I wouldn't expect Morgan Freeman to start talking like a little girl if he's giving a speech at a grade school in Oregon or something like that. People expect him to sound like Morgan Freeman. But for some of us, I guess we just have not a very clear sense of self, like me, and I'd much rather be understood rather than to show off who I am and this is how I talk or whatever. So yes, over the years, I've caught myself sounding very different to a lot of different folks, different groups. And it's very funny when years later we'll communicate through Skype or Zoom or on a phone. and people will say, "Is this you? You don't sound like you." And of course, they only knew me when I lived in East Africa or in Sweden or in China, and maybe I sounded different during those times after months and months of, trying to fit in to those styles of talking. Anyway, love to hear what you guys have to say.